So, speaking of Virgil van Dijk, we are going to switch gears and Targo, let's go over why Chelsea and Liverpool suck so bad this season.
So who should we start with?
Before we get started, I will give Liverpool a little bit of credit. They at least have a fighting chance of making it into the Champions League this season.
So why don't we start with them? So they suck the least.
They suck the least. Okay. So that way you can rant a little bit more about the struggling Chelsea. Okay. So we got Liverpool, 23 games in. They've won 10, drawn 6, lost 7. They've let in more goals than they did all of last season already.
More losses than the last 2 seasons, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
already.
That is also true. And they're on 36 points. They are 9 points out of 4th place with 2 games in hand.
So it's definitely, obviously, possible for them to get in the Champions League. I think they'll get close. I don't know if they'll quite do it. But they got a fighting chance. I'll say that. But here's where I think it went wrong for Liverpool this season. Honestly, the biggest talking point is going to be Sadio Mane leaving. I know you and I, we probably both think he was probably their best player, him or Mo Salah.
I think he was, yeah, 100%.
And so that's going to be a huge blow. They brought in Darwin Nunez to replace him. They spent a lot of money on Darwin Nunez. Close to, 100 million euros, something like that. But that's all they got. And then this January, they got Cody Gakpo. Kind of out of necessity because Luis Diaz has been out injured quite a bit. And Roberto Firmino's not in the best form. And I think that's the second talking point. They haven't signed any really new players, especially to that midfield, an aging midfield out of form. And so there's number 1 and 2. Sadio Mane leaving. No real signings except for 2 this past year. And then form as the number 3 thing, man. Virgil van Dijk has not been in good form. Trent Alexander-Arnold has been in terrible form defensively.
Terrible form.
Alisson, you could say, is not up to Alisson's standards. I mean, Fabinho looks terrible, man. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to sell him here this summer.
Yeah.
Henderson's aging. I mean, Naby Keita was always a bench player. Darwin Nunez, I will say, has done all right. You expect him to probably do a little bit better for the amount of money they paid for him, but I would say he's done all right.
I would say that his finishing has been poor, but he is getting himself in a lot of really good attacking situations and very good positioning going forward. So that part is promising.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine he's going to start finishing some of these chances, and you'll see his numbers really go up.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, also a player that we're not used to the standards that we've seen in the past is Mo Salah, man. Mohamed Salah, he used to strike fear in defenders. Now it's almost like he's just a walkabout. He's out there on a walkabout, just kind of doing his thing. Don't really see a lot of intensity from him. You know, you used to seeing him drive at defenders, having those quick feet in the box, curling a shot around a goalie. Now you see him, defenders getting a toe on the ball or his shots going right at the goalie. And so for me, those are the 3 things why Liverpool probably aren't doing the best this season is Sadio Mane, loss of him, no signings really especially in that midfield, and then just players out of form.
Okay. About Mo Salah on that note, I think your first point is the biggest reason why his form has struggled this season. And Sadio Mane leaving, because with the strike partnership they had, they were interchangeable, right? They were all over the pitch. Now, he's stuck out on the right-hand side, doesn't really move from there. It's not as dynamic. So
I would argue he played quite a bit on that right-hand side when Sadio Mane was there.
They were a lot more interchangeable, I will say that. They're getting back there with Klopp putting Gakpo up front and Nunez out on the left, but that takes time. Time they don't really necessarily have. So my 3, I'm going to go in a different direction, but also the same. I know you mentioned Darwin Nunez and Cody Gakpo as their only signings. Both are in attack. I mean, they needed to replace Sadio Mane, but they had Luis Diaz, and he's been hurt. I think their real problem is their aging midfield. Because they're getting older, I mean, not a single one of them, except for the new guy, I think it's pronounced Besic.
Besic, yeah, something like that.
And he's not a natural midfielder.
I think he's a natural midfielder, but he's young, doesn't have a lot of experience. And that was obviously put on display against Real Madrid.
Yeah. But they have an aging Jordan Henderson, an aging Fabinho, who looks like a shadow of himself this season. Oxlade-Chamberlain, who I, sometimes forget even plays anymore. James Milner, who's like 100 years old.
But probably the fittest one.
No, 100%.
Thiago's been injured.
Thiago's been hurt most of the season. So between injuries and their aging midfield, teams just run right through them once they get the ball. Even as a defender, in form or out of form, it's hard to keep teams out of the net if your midfield doesn't do anything. So first one is their aging midfield. Kind of linked to that for my second one is that they spent all of their money on attackers. I mean, 100 mil euro for Darwin Nunez essentially wiped them out for having any money for midfielders. Was that the right choice for a transfer? I mean, I know Darwin Nunez is very, very promising, and in the next 5 years could be the best striker in the world. Could be. Next to Erling Haaland. Time will tell on that one. But was Cody Gakpo the right decision in January? No. I don't think
they needed a midfielder, man.
Yeah, they needed a midfielder desperately. And for 40 mil, you almost have your pick of the litter. And then losing Giorgio Wijnaldum was a huge blow.
Yeah,
letting
a couple
him
years
go
ago,
on a
they never
free to
replaced
PSG,
him.
and ever since then he's been on loan. Went to AS Roma, and now I think he's in Turkey. So why not keep a hold of him and give him a short-term contract? Yes, he's still old, but he was fantastic in that midfield. And then lastly, it's got to be injuries. It's got to be.
An injury we forgot to mention was Diogo Jota.
Yeah. And to that credit, do you really need Cody Gakpo if you have a healthy Diogo Jota?
And Luis Diaz?
Yeah, no, you don't. Not at all. So maybe Gakpo was more of a panic buy, but yeah, I mean, almost every single player on the team has been hurt at some point this season. Some out longer than others, and Diaz and Jota, and Virgil van Dijk was even out for a month. So it's hard to get good form going when a lot of your best players have been out for an extended period of time. I know Jurgen Klopp says it, but that is hard to do. So aging midfield, money spent on attackers and injuries. I do want to add a fourth, though. Maybe this is coincidence. Maybe it's not. The Jurgen Klopp 7-year curse. Every team he's been at, the team has crumbled, and he's left after the 7th year. This is 7th year at Liverpool. He says he wants to stay and rebuild.
Do you think he's the man for the job to stay?
Do you think he rebuilt Liverpool when he first got there.
Yeah, it took him a couple years.
Yeah.
I mean, some people might not remember, but their first year Klopp got there, they weren't title contenders right away.
I think they finished 8th, did they not?
It was somewhere around there, 6th, 8th, yeah. I don't know what the exact position was, but it took them some years.
So maybe it's the Klopp 7-year curse. I don't know. Klopp has never stayed at a team longer than that. If he stays at Liverpool, this will be new territory for him. Does he do better? Does he go on a second rebuild?
You're right. It was 8th place. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, well, thank you. Glad I could remember that. It's kind of a shot in the dark, I'll be honest. Yeah, it just does Jurgen Klopp have it in him to rebuild a second time? Do the Liverpool owners in that Fenway ownership group give him the money he needs to do that? Because we're talking hundreds of millions of pounds to be able to do that. So do they give him that money? If they don't, if you're Jurgen Klopp, do you just leave because you don't have what you need to be able to rebuild the squad? You don't have support? I don't know.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough one right there. Because I think Klopp is the right coach if he has the resources. But does Liverpool have the resources to give him to be able to rebuild this team?
I think they do have the resources. I mean, they're one of the most profitable clubs in the world. However, it's do that Fenway ownership group want to give him the money? And that one is a tough ask. Because they haven't been known to give him that money, except for when they first bought the team. So, time will tell on that one.
But they have spent quite a money. Like, they spent quite a bit of money on Virgil van Dijk, Alisson.
Yeah, I mean, they've spent
Maybe
over
Keita.
$2 billion since Klopp got there. Yes.
I don't think it's been that much.
It has been in the last 7 years. Yes.
But yeah, they've spent some money. So that's kind of what's going on with Liverpool. I do think they'll get, like I said, they'll for sure, I think, be in their Europa League. I think they can get up to Europa League spot. Champions League will be tough. It's possible, but they'll need to win a lot of games here and kind of turn some of this form around. They need to make Anfield a fortress again for sure.
Yeah. I know the fans want to. It's going to be dependent on the play on the field. So let's move on to Chelsea. Now, I know there's a million ways we could poke this bear, but where do we start? I guess we're sitting in 10th. They have more losses than they have wins, almost as many draws as they have wins.
Closer to the relegation zone than the Champions League spot.
Yeah. 14 points from Champions League and 10 points from the relegation zone. For the first time in as long as I can remember, they have a negative goal difference. They have scored, I think it was 11 goals total since October. I think that's
they have the least amount of goals in the past 11 games, which is worst out of any club.
They scored 1 goal in February. What's going on with Chelsea?
There's a lot going on at Chelsea, man. It's a group of players and not a team at this point. Let's be honest. They're really good players, but they're not a team.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues we're obviously going to have to look at, besides injuries, they had their injuries there for a while. You know, they're going to have to deal with another one. Thiago Silva is going to be out for some time. But, I mean, they had Raheem Sterling, Reece James, Edward Mendy, Ben Chilwell. I mean, all these players, Mason Mount, whoever else was injured. They had a lot. N'Golo Kante. So injuries, I would say, were the start of this downfall. But you've seen some of these players come back. The Reece James, Chilwell, Sterling. So now I'm starting to look at Potter, man. He's the coach. He's got to figure out who his best 11 is on that field. Because you see him, he doesn't know who his best 11 is at this point. He's making 5-6 changes every other game. And so he needs to figure out who his team is going to be and kind of stick with it, I think. And that will help him hopefully put together some wins, get some goals. Because, I mean, you look at the talent on the field, there should be goals in there. They should not go 6 hours without scoring a goal. You think there'd be an accidental goal after 6 hours, a cross whipped in, and a defender makes a mistake or something like that.
100%.
I mean, with Kai Havertz, Raheem Sterling, they have an Aubameyang. They have
João
Mount,
Felix, Milo Mudryk, Enzo Fernandez. I can keep going.
Yeah, they have really good players. I mean, I think the players are starting to let Potter down too. You know, I think they should give him some time. I do. Because, I don't know who you bring in at this time. I guess my question would be, if they brought in Zidane tomorrow, would that make a difference? Maybe.
No,
No.
probably not. Maybe.
And so that's what I'm saying. I think they got to stick by him. But if they don't start moving up the table, at least seeing some positive play, it's like I can understand if you lose, but there's different ways of losing. You know what I mean? Like you can lose in disgrace, or you can lose with a fight. And I don't see any fight right now from that Chelsea team.
I don't either. I think the most worrying thing is, I mean, a team like Chelsea, we're used to seeing them score. I mean, even when losing, scoring, right? Not going a month and scoring one goal. That is not like any Chelsea squad I've ever seen, especially with the talent they have. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, for the record, they spent over $350 million in January, signed 8 players. But you're right. They're just a team of players. There's no cohesion there. There's no fight. They've had injuries, but, I mean, can you tell me, like, a core player on that team that's been there for a while that's healthy?
I would have said Thiago Silva until he went out injured in that Tottenham game.
Yeah. Okay. Kepa, is he a leader? No. We all know that. Otherwise,
I would have said Jorginho. They sold him.
They sold him. N'Golo Kante.
He's been out injured
He's been injured all season. I guess he's back in training, but he's probably still a ways out from full fitness.
Match fitness, yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many players, and none of them have been playing for Chelsea for an extended period of time that are healthy.
I can tell you this. They have a bit of favorable matches coming up at the Bridge. Like we mentioned, they play Leeds next. I think if Graham Potter doesn't win these next couple games, he might not be there.
I 100% agree, which was going to lead me to my next point is I think Chelsea and the ecosystem and personalities they have, I think it might be too much for Graham Potter. He's coming from a team where yes, there's personalities, but there's not these superstar egos, 100 million pound transfers in Brighton. And yes, he did wonders at Brighton. Yes, he's got this fantastic staff around him that are planning for years ahead. But if you don't win now, you're not going to make it years ahead. So what's the point?
Honestly, I think it's his work at Brighton that has kept him at his job still. I mean, that's how you think of
100%.
Graham Potter. You think of the success he had with Brighton. And I think he's still kind of riding that coattail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Brighton are still, they have four points ahead of them with 2 games in hand. So, and much more entertaining to watch because they actually score goals. However, I think this is too much for Graham Potter. And at what point do you not stick by him anymore? I think they'll probably see out the season with him because honestly, you're going to have to pay rumored to be $50 million to get rid of him before the summer. And what coaches are available that you would take besides Thomas Tuchel?
Yeah, I don't know what coaches they would be able to get. I guess kind of, like I said, I think they should keep him for, the reasons you had mentioned. But if they did fire him, does Chelsea get a new manager bounce or their heads in the locker room go up? Like I said, if a Zidane came in, do they start listening a little bit better knowing that they're listening to a Zinedine Zidane versus a Graham Potter?
I think that, yes, they would because they all would respect Zinedine Zidane. Graham Potter reminds me a lot of Mikel Arteta, but with more egos in his dressing room and more money to spend and used it all at once.
Do you think Graham Potter actually wanted the players that Chelsea bought, or was that Todd Bowley?
I would go with that probably about 50-50. I could see Graham Potter wanting Mihailo Mudryk. I don't know if he wanted João Felix. A lot of those younger players that they bought, yeah, I could see it. It just fits right into Graham Potter's MO. but Aubameyang definitely not. But I guess that's left over from
Tuchel bought him.
Just like Arteta inherited a squad that was, quite frankly, shit, with a bunch of players that just wanted to collect a paycheck and had no passion or drive on the field.
And so I
see a very similar situation with Potter, but I don't see the personality in Graham Potter that Arteta has.
And so that's what I was going to kind of allude to, is a lot of people are comparing Potter to Arteta and saying, give him time, look how it worked for Arteta. But kind of what happened with Arteta, man, is that documentary, that Amazon documentary, and you could see the fire in Arteta. Do you see that same fire in Graham Potter?
No way in hell.
And so that's kind of what
I don't.
Yeah, I'm on the. Yeah.
I mean, for those of you listening to this, the best example I could give you is just watch their press conferences side by side. Arteta's press conferences, Graham Potter's. Graham Potter has next to no personality. Arteta has tons of it and a lot of passion. You can see it in his eyes. That is a huge difference, in my opinion. So I don't think the comparison should even be made, but the scenarios and situations when they both started are similar, so I understand.
So I guess on the other end of it, you have Manchester United with Erik ten Hag. He didn't start out this season the best. As you remember, Man United had a rough start to this season. And they've stuck by him. And look at Manchester United right now, man. They're flying high, sitting in third place, still technically title contenders, still could win a quadruple. I think that's almost a better comparison to look at.
I agree, but I mean, before this season, before Ten Hag got hired, I mean, would you have considered Ten Hag in the best coaches in club football?
No, I would say he is now. He had some big egos. He had Ronaldo's ego to deal with, and I thought he honestly handled it perfect. Says, you don't want to be here? Well, see you later.
So prior to him getting hired from Manchester United and seeing the job he did at Ajax, I would have considered him at least in my top 10 best coaches in club football. Graham Potter, I would not have put anywhere near that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is Erik ten Hag is a much, much better coach prior to being hired by Manchester United than Graham Potter ever was.
Well, and he's showing it now, especially.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a fair comparison. I don't know if either one is a fair comparison. And Graham Potter might just be his own special case, but either way, let us know in the comments. Let us know on our Facebook group. What do you guys think? I think Graham Potter might be the problem. I also think that, they don't have a striker either, so that's not going to help anything, but Graham Potter might just be
out of his depth.
Public enemy number one for Chelsea.
I think he is. Especially, like I said, if these next couple games don't go their way. But I think that's all for this episode, guys. We appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. Again, make sure to keep an eye open for our live stream this weekend. You'll want to hop on our Instagram, Facebook, so you can know when all that's going down at Brews and Banter FC.
March 5th, 8:15 a.m. sharp Pacific time.
Well, there you go.
Come watch us. Have some fun with all of you.
That's right. And again, make sure to check out our Redbubble, get some merch. We'll be putting out some new merch soon. Because we love doing this, guys. It's a lot of fun for us.
Arguably.
And we want to keep doing it.
It'll be arguably.
Arguably. But that's it for us. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Love you guys. Cheers.